Hi everybody, Penny here. Welcome to my kitchen. So we took a break for September. It was a busy month. So we just couldn't find the time to fit it all in, but we're back and we're happy about it. So today I'm going to make lasagna. Now, my great Aunt Rose showed me many moons ago, probably like almost 30 years ago, shortly after we were married, how to make her lasagna. And this is it. And I hope I haven't changed anything too much along the way over the years. You know how recipes kind of evolve. But this is my Aunt Rose's lasagna. And I'm also going to be putting this in my heirloom section of my cookbook. So I'm really excited about that. So what I have is a proper lasagna pan. Now this is a cast iron coated proper lasagna pan. So it is, a good 3.5 inches high. So I'm going to get a good 3 layers in here. If you don't have anything as high as that, you can do 2 layers. Not a problem. Don't worry about it. So I'm just going to lay this aside for now. Okie dokie. And it doesn't have to necessarily be like a 9 by 13. If you have a roaster that has a high side, you could easily do this in a roaster. It doesn't have to be square, could be round. It's all good. Now we're not going to pre-boil our noodles. This is what Aunt Rose showed me how to do, and she used oven-ready noodles. So there's no pre-boiling or anything like that. Now to use the oven-ready noodles, you have to make sure your sauce is not too thick. It needs to be a little thinner because the noodles are going to absorb the liquid. So you want to make sure there's enough liquid in there to be able to do that. So what else we have is 1 large onion, 1 stick of celery, and 1 red pepper. If what you have in the house is green pepper, that's fine. If you have both, throw both of them in. But they are finely diced. I also have 4 cloves of garlic, finely diced, or chopped I should say. We have Worcester sauce, we have oregano, we have the Italiano spice mix, salt and pepper, and we have 3 tubes, 1-pound tubes of a combination of ground beef and ground pork. If you want to use all ground beef, or you want to use all ground pork, or if you want to use all ground turkey, all ground chicken, whatever floats your boat. Oh, Italian sausage. Take it out of the casing and use that as your meat would be really cool too. And especially if you didn't have the spices on hand, because the Italian sausage is already spiced. So that's awesome. We also have 2 cans of just plain tomato sauce. That's the larger cans. And then 1 large can of diced tomatoes. But no tomato paste, because like I said earlier, it needs to be a bit thinner than you would if it was with pre-boiled noodles. Then we also have 2 regular containers of cottage cheese. To that we're going to add 1 box of frozen chopped spinach. Now I didn't have a box, I had a bag of those little nubs, those little cubes I guess. So I have 6 little cubes in there, which is roughly equal to 1 box of chopped spinach. And to that we're going to add 2 eggs. So I think that's everything. So we're going to get going, and we are going to saute our onions, celery, and red pepper in a little bit of olive oil, or whatever oil you normally have on hand. So we'll throw all that in there. So we want to get them nice and soft for the lasagna sauce. So we're going to add the meat in a little bit, and then we're going to let it simmer for about 20 minutes. So we don't necessarily have to keep them in there by themselves for very long, but a few minutes. I'm not going to put the garlic in yet because I don't want it to burn, but I am going to add 1 heaping tablespoon, and that's just a kitchen tablespoon, not a measuring tablespoon, of oregano. And I'm going to add 1 heaping tablespoon of the Italian mixed spices. Now, if you don't have the Italian mixed spices, but you have thyme, basil, a bit of rosemary, you can do like a teaspoon of each, along with the 1 tablespoon of oregano. If you don't have the oregano, you just have the Italian combined seasoning spice, use 2 tablespoons of that. Okay, so, oops, that's okay. So we're just gonna let that go for a few minutes. And what we're doing now is we're waking up all those dry spices in the oil. If you are using fresh herbs, then you want to add them towards the end of when your sauce is done, and in the last 10 minutes when you're kind of simmering it to let the flavors go through. But with dried herbs, you need to be able to wake them up a little bit. So now I'm just going to use a pinch of salt, not very much, and a half a pinch of pepper. There we go. Because there's already salt in the diced tomatoes and in your sauce. So you don't want to add too much salt at the beginning, but when the sauce is done, you can taste it and see if it needs any more. Okay. Alright, so while that's sauteing a little bit, let's put together our cottage cheese and spinach, and that's defrosted, of course, and squeezed out a little bit of the water. If the extra water is in there, it's not a big deal because we're using the oven-ready noodles. But if you're using the pre-boiled noodles, then you want to keep out as much water as possible because you don't want that to slide around, right? Okay, so now we're also going to add 2 eggs. There's 1. There's 2. Just going to wipe my hands for a minute. Give this a stir. Oh, the onions are strong. There we go. I'll just beat them up a little bit. I just have a spoon, but that's okay. There we go. Now, I'll mix that into our cottage cheese and spinach. Now, cottage cheese in a lasagna is very much a North American thing. If you were in Italy, my understanding is this would be ricotta cheese. So if you have ricotta cheese and you like ricotta cheese, which unfortunately I'm not overly fond of, then go for it. But this is how Aunt Rose showed me with the cottage cheese. Okay, so we're just going to lay that aside, and they're starting to sweat a little bit now, so we're going to add our meat. There we go. There we go. Ta-da! Just get all of that in there. Now, this is specifically from Pampered Chef for hamburger meat, for ground meat, so you can break it up. So you kind of just go in and twist, and it's awesome. It breaks it up into little pieces in no time. Okay, so that's it for now. I'll do it again in a minute. And now we need to add our Worcester sauce. So we're going to brown that up. So that's a tablespoon or so. Probably closer to 2 tablespoons, but I really like Worcester sauce. So we're going to add the garlic in just a minute. And turn that up a little bit. When this is all browned, we're going to add our 2 cans of tomato sauce, just plain tomato sauce, and our 1 can of diced tomatoes. Sorry, I'm just looking at what I got going here. Okay, so this is going to take probably, 10 minutes to brown up. We're going to add the sauces. Let that simmer for about 20 minutes, let all the flavors go through, and then I'll be back to show you how to assemble the lasagna. Hey everybody, back again. So our sauce, our meat sauce, has simmered for about 20 minutes once it was brought up to simmer, and it's all ready to go. Our cottage cheese with our eggs and our spinach is all ready to go. I cheated and we bought some shredded mozzarella cheese for the top, but that's okay. And we have our lasagna noodles, our oven ready lasagna noodles, and the oven is preheated to 350. So now it's time to assemble. So we're going to take a couple of scoops on the bottom. There we go. And a little bit of the liquid. Move that around. Maybe one more. There we go. A white top was probably not the best idea for this recipe, but that's okay. All right, now we're going to do our lasagna noodles. And again, they're not pre-boiled, they're the oven-ready ones. And you just put them in a layer. Oh, look, that one fits perfect. And there we go. Lay that one aside. So once you have your first layer of your lasagna noodles, then you do your cottage cheese. But like I said, the cottage cheese is more or less an American thing. If you were in Italy, it would likely be ricotta cheese. But that's okay. It's all good. So funny story. Many moons ago, after Aunt Rose taught me how to make this lasagna, she was out of town, and her son, his wife, was also out of town. Another layer of lasagna noodles. And so when I was making a lasagna, I did a separate one for him in a bread pan. And I froze it. And then when I brought it out to him, it was so funny. I brought it out to him and said, now it's frozen, so if you want to eat it, just let it defrost and warm it up in the oven. So he was tickled, so that was fine. And the next time I went out to see him, he said to me, he said, Penny, that was the best lasagna I ever had, but don't tell Mom. And I laughed and I said, well, it's her recipe. It was so funny. It's all good. I'm going to put an extra one in there, I think. You do have to crack it off to fit your pan, and that's why I said if you don't have a square pan but you have a high-edged round pan or oval pan, just make it work. It's all good. There we go. Now we're going to have a really nice layer of our meat sauce. And if you don't want meat, you just want to load up your sauce with vegetables, you can do that too. Not a problem. I'm going to do one more over here, I think. And there we go, that's better. So we're going to go for more noodles. And we're going to have to open our second box. They're not exactly the same. They're two different brands. Once it's cooked, you won't know the difference. There we go. Just going to pull that one over a little bit. Then we need one more for down on the bottom. There we are. Now is our cottage cheese. Best you can. And more noodles. And And I like to alternate because this pan is a little too long for these lasagna noodles. So I go this way and one that way, and then this way and one that way, and so on. But that's just me. Whatever works for you, works. There we go. Just crack that one a little bit. A couple there, more sauce. Now typically, in a regular 9x13 pan, this is where you would stop because you wouldn't have enough room for another layer. But this is a proper lasagna pan, and I'm gonna get a whole nother layer of cottage cheese, noodles, and meat in here. But if you use your roaster or something like that that's got a higher edge, you can also get a really high lasagna. It's really, really good. Okay, more noodles. Don't remember where I left off. I think it was this way. I'm not really sure, but that's okay. It's all good. There we are. And it's hot on the fingers. There we go. There we are. Excuse me 1 second. Nose is running. So now we're going to use the rest of our cottage cheese. So if you were doing just a 2-layer one, you could reduce the cottage cheese down to 1 tub. But I really like the cottage cheese. So even if I was using just a regular 9x13 pan, which is only like 2 inches high, I would still use the 2 tubs. But if cottage cheese is not your favorite and you want to reduce it down to 1, you certainly can do that. Okay. Last of the noodles. Uh-oh, we're about 1 noodle shy, but that's okay. It will still be delicious. We'll just throw in those little bits. Now we're going to cover this with all of our sauce. The first box that I opened wasn't quite full. It was a leftover box, but if you have 2 full boxes, you won't run out of noodles. Yay! And as you can see, the sauce is not overly thick, and you want it that way because the noodles are going to absorb all that lovely moisture. They cook. Look at that. Now you're going to want to put this on like a cookie sheet or something to that effect because it is going to bubble over as it cooks. But it is so delicious. Now we're going to cover that with tin foil. Then we're going to put it in the oven for about 45 minutes. Take it out of the oven, take the tin foil off, sprinkle on our Parmesan cheese, put it back in the oven uncovered for another 10 to 15, maybe even 20 minutes, depending on how brown you want your cheese to be. So when we're at that point, we will be back. Hi everybody, lasagna's ready. Okie dokie. So, oh my goodness. Let's give this a cut. So it was in the oven for 45 minutes, covered with tin foil. And we took the tin foil off, smothered it with mozzarella cheese, and put it back in uncovered for another 20 minutes. And then we took it out of the oven, and I've let it rest for 15 minutes. Because if you cut it right away, it's going to slide everywhere and it's not going to hold together. So you need to cut it after it rests for about 15 to 20 minutes. And ta-da! There is lasagna. I hope you give it a go. Enjoy. Bye. Yee.